Today's video is sponsored by HelloFresh. So today, Odin Gaming is announcing its Nova 65. It's a 65% keyboard with some decent stock internals, a couple things we haven't seen before, and a pretty lofty price tag of $149.99 for a bare bones, from a company mostly known for its mouse pads. We have a very early sample in-house today, and we're gonna take a look. You ready? Let's go! The Nova 65 is expected to launch with a retail of $149.99. It arrives as a pre-assembled bare bones kit, so no switches and no caps. It should be available in July or August, depending on final manufacturing and shipping. For transparency, this was sent out by Odin Gaming. No compensation took place. They didn't get to hear or see any aspect of this before you did. I will say too that this is a very early sample today, so I will be pointing out things throughout this video that I know they've already addressed. We've got a tray mount design, aluminum with really thin bezels, aluminum plate as well, but the underside is clear polycarb with the Odin Gaming logo. We also have 7 large diode LEDs that are downfiring to give some underglow. Now, that's an effect that's muted on this sample due to the low profile rubber case feet. The final production runs will have taller feet to allow for more of that glow. Being totally clear like this, it's not going to diffuse light when looking at it from the underside, but it does give you an interesting look at the internals of the board. The PCB is a Yancar design branded specifically for this board. It's impressive. You may recognize this from the NK65 boards. So you have KO hot swap sockets. These are south facing and have 5-pin switch support, but unlike the NK65, they also have PCB mounted stab support, which is the move, and the included stabs are Durock V2s. These will be included in the production run. These will arrive dry so you can lube them to your liking without having to clean up a factory lube job first. I opted for a simple 205 grade 0 and dielectric grease on these with some stab pads. I noticed on this copy that the plate holes for the stabs near the spacebar are really tight, so hopefully they're making some adjustments to the tolerances there, as I had to force the plate down onto the stabs, leaving them pretty scuffed. These case screws that really jump out at you are already slated for a redesign to make them a better blend with the plate in terms of color and fit. Luckily, there are only 5 to get inside the board. We also have some decent foam included here between the PCB and the plate. Cable connection is left side USB-C. My sample did not include a cable. It's pretty flush with the outside of the case, so you'll likely wind up with a bit of the connector visible like we saw on the Portico. You may also notice that the escape and the 1 key are north-facing sockets. At first glance, I assumed this was just for the prototype, but it's not. If you look at where that port is positioned, you'll see that the hot swap sockets will conflict with that USB port. You can also see we have a little more space on the opposite side, like where the port is on the NK65, but that space is cut into by going with PCB mount stabs. This may shed some light as to why the NK65 rolled out with plate mount stabilizers. I don't know that there's an easy way to solve this. Having escape and 1 being different isn't the end of the world, as you won't be using them in rapid succession with the rest of your alphas. I mean, like having a couple inverted sockets in the middle of your alphas like your G or your H, where it's going to be next to your frequently used keys. There's just something a little unsettling about knowing that 2 of my sockets are different from all of the others. I guess I never realized that the Tofu 65 PCB has the same issue. I really want to hear from you all on this one. Is this weird? Is it a deal breaker for you? Am I overreacting? Would you prefer that the whole board be north facing instead? Let me know in the comments. We do have support for VIA here. You love to see it. No support for QMK at this time. In terms of build, that foam layer does have some play, and it's hard to get it aligned just right to get the PCB and the plate back in the case. This may not be an issue if they weren't bonded together in a single assembly due to the stab openings on the plate. The other issue is the screws, and not just for the aesthetics. Hopefully they're investigating a longer option, as the screws engaged in the threads make the plate so low that the switches don't mount flush on that bottom row. Lastly, I just want to point out that the case does not completely obscure the view of the switches under the caps, as I know that bothers some of you. So we heard both some lubed Polar Pandas and some lubed and filmed H1s as well. Pretty top tier switches in their respective categories, so you get a feel for the sound from both a Thok and a Clack perspective. I don't get a lot of ping, which is great. I do get some of that hollow sound that I've come to associate with non-dampened tray mount boards, and some row inconsistency in there as well. On the whole though, it sounds better than I had anticipated. I know they're already working on some revisions to the polycarb material they're using, because in its current form, it's not durable. Scratch is easy, application in the corners is pretty rough. It also really limits the amount of sound dampening you can do to this board without compromising the intended aesthetic. And that's kind of a shame because this board would definitely benefit from some case foam. You also heard the very loud space bar in there. What you're hearing is the bar itself bottoming out on the plate because I can't get the plate and the stabs to seat fully. Being a content creator can be a little wild sometimes because you don't really have an excess amount of free time or creative bandwidth when it comes to stuff like meal planning, even knowing what to get after you're already at the grocery store, assuming you even have time to do that. I would literally eat the same things every day all the time if it were left up to me. That's one reason why I've really been enjoying my time with HelloFresh, the sponsor of today's video. HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit. They deliver fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to my door. It saves me a ton of time every week. It cuts out all the stress of meal planning, introduces me to recipes I would have never tried on my own, and it gets dinner on the table in just about 30 minutes. All your ingredients come pre-portioned, so there's less prep time and less potential for wasted food. Even the packaging is made up almost entirely from recyclable and/or already recycled content. And their carbon footprint is 25% lower than meals made from store-bought groceries. Of course, all that convenience and flexibility wouldn't hit quite the same if the meals didn't taste delicious. Luckily, everything I've had from HelloFresh has been amazing. They have options for low-calorie, carb-smart, even veg and pescatarian options as well. And if you count calories, they make it really easy. We cook a lot, even though it's just the two of us, because it saves us a ton of money versus going to get takeout every night. Since we've been using HelloFresh and being introduced to some recipes that we wouldn't normally, we find ourselves cooking together, which has been a really fun way to spend time versus just taking to-go boxes and sitting down in front of the TV. To get started, go to HelloFresh.com and use code BADSEEDTech12 to get 12 free meals and free shipping. Big thanks to HelloFresh for sponsoring today, and thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. The caps and the sound test come from Odin Gaming as well. These appear to be die-sub PVT and they're currently priced at $49.99. They will be complete 110 key sets, so they should be compatible with just about any board you can find. I don't want to focus too much on these because the legends are pretty rough on this early sample. They've adjusted the font size and the weight on most of the mods to be more consistent, so we'll have to wait for the finals. I am missing the black up arrow as UPS had an absolute field day with this package and the caps were broken open in transit. You may also notice the strange mod layout on the right side. It's my understanding this has been changed to a more familiar spacing with a bigger space in between the alt and the arrows for the final. So since this is a first look at a really early sample, I don't want to dig too deep into the value conversation because this still feels pretty far away from even a polished pre-release. Instead, knowing that Odin Gaming will definitely be watching this video and will likely be interacting with you in the comments, I would take this opportunity to interact directly with them. In terms of competition, I feel like we've moved past the current revision of the $95 NK65 entry, with the plate mount stabs being the major negative factor. But it is getting pretty crowded in that $99 to $149 price segment. Got the Portico there, the Icky 68 Aurora, and the KBD 67 Lite, all in polycarb cases, none with actual availability at the time of this video. The Nova 65 comes in under the Tofu 65. You've also got the Keychron K6 out there at $99 with wireless. And of course we have the GMMK Pro out there, which has been doing numbers. It's also currently in pre-order as well as they push to meet the demand. So what do you think? Is this for you? Any suggestions? Anything you want to see handled different? To me, it feels like it's priced a little north of where I'd like to see it. I will be really curious to see this unfold, and I would hold off on making any purchase decisions until we see some coverage of the final, because this still feels very prototype in its current state. As always, links down below for everything we talked about today. Any questions, hit me in the comments. And that's it for this time. I'm Brian P. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button, hit that sub button, and until next time, stay up.